This is the BBC.
Dear brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Hello and welcome. It's another Confessions podcast from your friends at the BBC, particularly at Radio 2. A whole bunch of sinful members of the public coming to tell their tales of deceit, debauchery and deception. Seeking dispensation from Sister Bobby, who's usually very forgiving, but she's changing her tune. Hello, Sister Bobby.
Hello, I have changed this week.
And Brother Matthew.
Hello.
And you, the good people of Radio 2 land. This week's collection features Therese's confession, Fear of the Cat, Dave's Tale, Daddy Fool, Sarah's misdemeanour, The Fickle Red Rooster, and another confession we've unearthed from the Confessions Crypt. It's a classic. First, we start with Marcus's confession, which we called Hold Back the Fright.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast. Please be seated.
Dear Simon and the Fortitude of Forgiving Finery. I think that's a new one. We'll add that to the list. Don't think we've had that before. This comes from Marcus. Simon, my confession takes us back to Now, we've had confessions in this. I just noticed at the top of this, it says definite PG rating. And the fact it says definite PG rating sort of gives it a little upward nudge towards the 12, do you think? I don't know.
Well, let's find out.
Hey, what?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Let's find out.
Oh, let's do that. Get on with it, he says. Okay. So let's go back to the mid-1980s when I was a serving police officer in a semi-rural town.
Already good.
I worked with around 8 other officers plus Sarge, and we happened to have in our patch one of the country's several mortuaries. Okay, so...
Already we're on fire, everyone.
Now you know what's going on. The mortuary was part of a former stately home and was in a large woodland on the outskirts of the old estate in a very quiet and secluded area. It was somewhat scary to some, especially at night, and given the nature of work and items stored at the facility. As part of the initiation of certain deserving new team members, we would send said officer up to the mortuary whilst on a night shift to patrol alone, under the guise of adding a nondescript note to a case or checking something meaningless in one of the coroner's files. Before the new recruit was due to head up there, another one of the team, who we'll call the Insider, would go ahead and hide in one of the mortuary's storage facilities. You've seen the ones on TV shows and movies, large pull-out drawers around 7 feet long, 2 feet wide and rather on the chilly side. So when the new recruit had entered and completed the fake job that they'd been given in the mortuary, the Insider would then push themselves out of the drawer, sit bolt upright and ensure the newbie had the fright of their lives.
Goodness me.
What larks we had. Hi!
Yes.
Now, one such newbie, we're going to call him Kevin, was a cocky know-it-all who was straight out of training school, looked about 14. It was agreed that Kevin definitely deserved the initiation, and so we planted another team member, Steve, at the mortuary to be our insider and frightened the life out of him. Kevin was then asked by Sarge to add some notes to a case file relating to a new tenant at the mortuary, and he dutifully headed up there. Sure enough, the plan worked as well as ever. Kevin entered the offices, located the file, and out slid Steve from the body store. Well, you can picture the scene. Kevin screamed and went as white as a sheet, and according to Steve, was very nearly sick. However, when he returned to the station to face the team ridicule, Kevin was adamant he hadn't been surprised at all. He wasn't scared in the slightest. He knew exactly what was going on, and he wasn't sick in his own mouth. Absolutely not. In fact, Kevin went on to say that he doesn't get shocked or surprised easily, and told us Steve was lying if he said otherwise. Well, this just made us hate Kevin even more. So it came to pass that I took Kevin to one side and suggested he could get back at Steve and reverse the trick. Kevin immediately agreed, thought it was a great whizzo idea, and so a couple of nights later, we told Kevin to go and hide in one of the slab drawers himself, and we'd take care of getting Steve there. Well, Kevin went up, as agreed, around midnight. He slid out one of the long slab drawers, laid down, slid himself in. 10 minutes passed. Steve hadn't shown. Kevin radios us back, asks what's going on. We're assured Steve was on his way. Sit tight, it would only be a few more minutes. Another 10 minutes passed, and another. Every so often, Kevin would be told just to hold tight, and that it would be worth it just to see the look on Steve's face. Nearly an hour had passed, and then, in the cold, pitch-black mortuary drawers, just as he was reaching for his radio again, Kevin suddenly felt a hand grip his knee and heard a brusque whisper saying, "It's cold in here, isn't it?" Kevin immediately sprang bolt upright, smacking his head on the roof of the drawer and screaming so loud we could hear him from our car sat outside the mortuary. Seconds later, we saw a blur of a uniform run out of the doors and into the woods, and we're pretty sure he was sobbing. A few seconds after that, our Sarge, who'd been keeping still in the drawer next to Kevin the whole time before springing his surprise, emerged with tears of laughter running down his face. Sure enough, Kevin wasn't so loud and cocky anymore. And although I suppose I should really apologise to Kevin for what we did, it was completely deserved, and to be honest, I really don't mind if you forgive me or not. So there. Oh. However, I do want to apologise to the conveyor belt coroners who arrived at work some mornings with random notes added to files or things inexplicably moved around. It may explain why many of them didn't last very long there in the first place. Anyway, so there's Marcus' little inside story from the police and from the mortuary. A jolly whiz, very funny, except Bobby is shaking her head.
Well,
Bobby
first of
Pryor.
all, I don't know a coroner's office, but I don't think it's something to be meddled with in the coroner's office. But also, I would have been terrified, and I don't think really you should put somebody under this much terror. Pressure, because it must have been absolutely terrifying. Can you imagine that in a dark room and suddenly you think something's come to life? I think it's one step too far. Also, you don't know how they're going to react. It's much too dangerous. However, the second ruse I love. So you're not forgiven for the first one. You're not forgiven for messing around in the mortuary, but you are forgiven for the second one with the sergeant. There you go.
Okay, so you're splitting your vote, really?
I'm splitting my vote.
All right, novice night.
This type of thing happens in the restaurant trade quite a lot. Normally involves chest freezers, and someone has gone missing for a couple of days, and they find him or her dead in the chest freezer, except they're not.
Oh, what a relief that must be.
And they normally have a bit of cochineal coming out of the corner of their mouth, and I've heard of that one. That's a really good one. Yeah, they normally leave the business of people who find them, but that's the intention. So here we go. This was a double banger, wasn't it? And I thought the first time fine, but second time, you know what occurred to me, northern boy that I am, I thought, we're paying for this. You know, it's coming out of our taxes. Once I don't mind, the second time, you know, who were the police funded by, you know? And I just saw, and he, you know, it was good. Okay, but old Kev should have owned up, and he obviously was absolutely terrified first time. Certainly was second time. But I think, Marcus, you went at him again, and I think he'd learned his lesson. So on this occasion, and we'll end up putting you. And also, you didn't even seek forgivenence from us, the Fortitude of Forgiving Finery. You don't care. So I don't care, and put you in the chest freezer. So no, you're not forgiven.
All right, a little bit. George Osborne there at the end. Okay, Matthew.
Can I be the only one who thinks this is really all Kevin's fault? I mean, he was the one who said, I don't get scared easy. I'm the one that I don't get shocked. It's a bit like saying I'm not ticklish and then wondering why everyone tries to tickle you. So he was always on a hiding to nothing here. And as Nigel rightly points out, no remorse. So, you know, how are we going to forgive that? We're not going to forgive it. That's how we're going to forgive it. So not forgiven.
The Confessions Podcast.
Father Simon, my confession goes back to when I was an 8-year-old at prep school, which means I'd been troubled for over half a century with this undeclared burden. My tale takes place in December, when it's auditions for our school production, and the play we were going to do was Good King Wenceslas. On reflection, an unusual choice, as it's a limited story with only one known character, which is the Good King himself. On the day of the audition, I was one of a class of little girls who all sat excitedly cross-legged in a room festooned with the costumes we would be wearing. It truly was a magical sight. There was the magnificent brocade outfit laden with braid and buttons and flashes of scarlet, along with the golden and bejewelled crown designated for the lead part, the good King Wenceslas himself. There was also various green elfin costumes with little puckish ears and a couple of handsome reindeer outfits with impressive antlers. I don't remember reindeers in the story particularly, but hey,
Do you
it's
not?
a school in December.
What's the missing verse?
Chuck them all in. But the most bewitching sight of all were the dazzlingly beautiful white and sparkly dresses sprinkled with twinkling glitter and hung with floating satin ribbons, just waiting to be worn by the snowflakes. Then, over in the corner, lying dejectedly, was an early version of a red onesie, but without the benefit of modern stretchy fabrics and bereft of feathers, destined for the part of the rooster. Again, can't quite remember where that fits in, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Chuck him in too. Such a tender age, I had yet to decide between a career as a nurse, fireman or princess. A life of endless possibilities stretched ahead, perhaps even as the next Dame Judi Dench. But I think I knew even then that I was probably not made of the right stuff to be the star of the show. In any case, I was overcome with the anticipation of wearing one of the wondrous outfits for the part of a snowflake. As the allocation of roles got underway, no proper auditions necessary. The tallest and bossiest girl got the lead as the king. The taller girls got to be reindeers, and the smaller ones were awarded the role of elves, all very un-PC in those different days, different times indeed.
Very different. Yeah.
Finally, it was time to cast the snowflakes and the rooster. When asked for volunteers to be snowflakes, 5 eager hands shot up. Our teacher, Miss Fance, explained there was only a requirement for 4 little snowflakes, but none of my fellow thespians showed any sign of withdrawing. Miss Fance pleaded for someone to drop out, but I think it's fair to say all 5 of us would have killed to ensure that we were chosen, and so reluctantly Miss Fance had to have the casting vote. Now that I'm an adult, says Sarah, I can see she might have thought that she was being well-meaning in her rationale when she announced that I, as a farmer's daughter, should be the rooster because I would know how to crow.
Oh.
Needless to say, I was devastated by her judgment and was immediately overcome with a great seething at the injustice and unfairness of it all. On the day of the performance, there was a great buzz of excitement as family and friends took their places in the audience and all my classmates donned their finery. Except me, of course, in my ill-fitting, moth-eaten, bedraggled red onesie. I was a sorry sight. In the play, I was to appear twice, the first time being when I was required to stand in front and cock-a-doodle-doo. I'd been practising, and it's a talent I'm proud to say I've carried into adulthood. This, however, was merely a prelude to the starring moment when the snowflakes would flutter onto the stage and do their twirling and their pirouetting in their magnificent costumes. Then I would return and crow again and cross the stage to usher in good King Wenceslas and his entourage. Finally, the lights went down, the curtain went up and the play got underway. It all looked very theatrical. Very soon it was time for me to go on and do my first crow. I should add that my classmates who had got the snowflake roles were previously my best friends, but had now become terrible divas, and enjoyed laughing at my costume and my misfortune at every opportunity. I stepped out from the wings and stood alone against a wintry backdrop. There was an audible and pitiful murmur from the crowd, most parents so relieved it was not their child in this lamentable role. Nevertheless, I threw my head back and did a passable imitation of a cock crowing, and then something odd happened. In that moment, time froze, and I took the sudden and inexplicable decision not to head back to where the nervous little snowflakes hovered waiting to make their big entrance. Instead, I went to where good King Wenceslas and the reindeer and elves were gathered, and urgently gesticulated to usher them onto the stage instead. There was a lot of anxious looks and uncertainty, but I was quite commanding, and in the absence of any other instructions, they proceeded to go out in front and carry on with the play, effectively writing out of the performance the part of the snowflakes. Sorry about that, guys. I have no idea how this escaped Miss Fance. She was obviously too busy basking in the expected triumph of her production to notice. Off stage, I could see 4 very unhappy snowflakes who had been denied their moment of glory, and I am ashamed to say I felt nothing but glee. As a consequence of me editing the play, the show ended 5 minutes earlier than planned, by which time the enormity of what had happened had filtered through to Miss Fance. She had to go out onto the stage and make a grovelling apology to all the proud parents that never got to see their little darlings who by now were snivelling backstage. It was judged to be a genuine mistake for which no one was to blame, and certainly nobody pointed the finger at me. So, for this reason, says Sarah, I seek forgiveness, not from my classmates who never got to go on stage, because they deserved it, nor from Miss Fance, who should have been paying attention. I beg forgiveness from the parents who were denied the chance of seeing their children perform and probably never got the chance again to see them star on stage as a snowflake. Sarah is not sorry at all, not one bit. Quick thinking from the rooster there. Just if I do that, they don't get to go on stage at all in this well-known play of Good King Wenceslas. What do you say, Sister Bobby?
Well, normally I'd say, nah, come on, that's not allowed. The thing is, they were mean to you. They were really, really, really mean to you in your costume. They didn't have to be, so
Did
that
they
was
mean
their
to be mean
choice.
to her? I think
Yes, they
probably
did. Yes, they did. So I can understand as an 8-year-old your sabotage. The thing is, of course, is as an adult you wouldn't do that. As an adult, you'd wear that costume. You'd be the best chick at Cockerel and basically steal the show, because that's the thing to do. Play it for comedy value, steal all the applause from everyone else, and you'd have been absolutely fine if you'd just stuck with that. 'Cause
Walk
let's
on
face
6
it,
or 7 times.
Well, also, there's only one of you, so you're the original, you're the unique. You can really play that. That's how you should have obviously been taught by your mum and dad, but they weren't there. So I understand the sabotage as an 8-year-old, but as a grown-up, you could have really stolen the show in a best way with your own talent.
And so, therefore...
It's difficult. I'm on the fence here. I'm on the fence. So I think because you were 8... I'm
come on,
no,
Bobby Pye.
I'm not. I'm not actually, no, because it's still not very fair and it's not very
So
honest,
therefore-
and you ignored your teacher's instructions. I understand it, but you're unforgiven.
I'm forgiven. Brother
Sorry?
Matthew.
I'm unfamiliar with the play about Good King Wenceslas.
Well, what happens is he comes out on the Feast of Stephen.
and he looks out, it's all deep and crisp and even.
And then a snowball hits him on the snout.
Well, it's, there's not a lot of jeopardy or dramatic arc in this. But I would say, if I were one of the parents who'd been waiting, there is no point in going to these performances unless your dearly beloved is going to come out at some point. It is my idea of hell to be stuck in those kind of performances and not see your offspring come on
Where's
at some
my
point.
child?
Where is my child? Why am I sitting through this nonsense? It's not even well acted. She doesn't look like a rooster. And so therefore, I am not going to forgive, because when will someone please think of the parents?
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast.
Thanks to Sarah for Fickle Red Rooster, a tale of Machiavellian mischief at the school nativity play. Still to come, find out what confession resulted in this verdict from 2 angry listeners. Would you buy a car and throw the carburettor away? Don't cut bits off your pets. I'm not sure that... Does that analogy work?
No, and also it's about being a responsible pet owner, isn't it?
Wayne and Nicola.
I haven't said that, love it.
That's my favourite sentence from this week.
Did you mean don't cut bits off your
Both
pets?
of it works. You wouldn't take the carburettor out of the car. Well, no, I wouldn't. That's brilliant.
And a classic confession that features a bit of this. That's Lawnmower Death.
Yes, it is. Wow.
And the Lawnmower Death do the jingle for the mosh. And they do that because of the confession which you're going to hear later. Which
It's my favourite one with Matt, actually. It's lots of funny Matt.
Before we head back to the confessional booth, a couple of new bits and pieces from our notice board. And we start with a weekly reminder that we do have to maintain a certain standard of decency.
This is a good bit, yes.
On the podcast. Therefore, what follows now is the latest roll call of shame for confessions that we can't broadcast for hopefully obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the confession about the student outing, the beer drinking contest and the university coach driver who took part in it is just shameful and can't be condoned by anyone. Rob. A confession we've received from David about doctoring the water jugs with laxatives at a Christian camp for 300 youths that had 4 working toilets. It doesn't get past the compliance department. And, can I just say, and they almost never get on. So, I mean, genuinely, they don't. That's fine. I mean, that's all you need. 3 lines is all you need.
Yeah, brilliant.
But, laxative confessions never get on.
Still send them in, though.
Just to say, Gregory in Kent's tale about encouraging a friend to jump out a second-floor window that ended up with a trip to A&E.
No, obviously not.
Sarah's confession about the accidental flicking of a hamster high off a high table.
Okay.
Obviously, no, we don't
Step
condone
too
that.
far.
That is step too far. Quite right, Bobby. Well
It's in
done.
goat territory.
Goat? Oh, right, yes.
We'll save Sarah the nation's outrage by leaving it there. And the mum who told her 6-year-old daughter, Amber, that the Amber Alert she'd heard about in the news meant that the police were going to arrest all girls called Amber.
Hey!
And then said that it was the FBI the next time there was a knock on the door. Shame on you.
Correct.
If you could see the original of that one.
It's far worse.
Just to be clear, none of these are okay. Please send us your confessions that aren't like that. confessions@bbc.co.uk. Kirsty St. John has been on. Thank you for the Confessions podcast. My son and I love listening. Last week, the dancing old lady one made me cry. Ian Clark, back on this. Can we have an X-rated confessions again, please? As some of the notices you read out sound fabulous, but they're only good and acceptable in summary.
Well, they are, but it's all our imaginations go into overdrive, don't they? That's what makes it work.
Kirsty Pearson on our Facebook page. Love this show. My 13-year-old son listens. We love the confessions and we want more. Well, we do one a day apart from Friday. And loads of you enjoyed the classic cat flap confession on last week's podcast, which is certainly one of my favourites. Nick Holdridge on Twitter. Love cat flap lady. Definitely need a late night version. No, you don't. What? Chris Brameyer on Twitter. Cat flap confession is the greatest of all time. My request is the lift that was filled with polystyrene balls, which was...
yes.
And Shirley Soda is back on Facebook. Thank you, Father Simon, for reading my classic confession request about the cat flap lady. Yes, my name really is Shirley Soda. And I love the impression, whatever it was that I did. Joan, a few weeks ago, got in touch by email because I said, can you rate us?
Yes.
And to start with, I didn't say, can you rate us on iTunes, which is what most podcasts do, because I thought it sounded a little bit commercial and maybe a little bit needy. Anyway,
it definitely is needy.
She's rated us again, this time in the correct place, because she said this. Confused Joan says, 5 stars. This is hysterical. Love it. 5 stars from me, and even 6. And yes, Simon, I finally clicked. You did ask me to mention it. For being such a thick-wit. But hey, there's always one. Please do try to play some of the blacklisted ones. Everybody wants the blacklisted ones. They're not getting on.
Blacklisted ones, I like that, yeah.
Dave Bainham, this is his review. The best podcast by miles in our tunes. That's what he's called it.
Well done. No, that's quite right.
Any chance of the hamster and the remote control plane?
No, we can't do that one.
We could do it in summary.
Oh, right.
The one about the hamster in the sister's remote controlled aircraft that never came back. That's not getting on again.
That's not getting on. Simon, can you do a kind of live show at the Fringe, maybe? Maybe confessions at the Fringe?
You think?
Live show only? Maybe?
After
in
hours.
a room, midnight.
Bit saucy.
Gilded balloon. 400-seater.
Gilded balloon. That's a venue,
That's a
isn't
venue,
it? Okay.
yeah.
Well, think about it. We'd have to reenact them.
Obviously.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Matt,
I'll be the hamster.
You could be the cat flap lady, Matt.
In a frock.
Yes, please.
So we also need to say big hello and thank you to everyone who downloads us around the world, because you can download us wherever you are. Simon, who listens in New Zealand. I emigrated from the UK to New Zealand about 3 years ago. There are a few things I must take with me. Fresh cream apple turnover, real pork pies, and the drive time home with Simon Mayo, especially the confessions. And now listen to the confessions on a Saturday evening whilst driving from Auckland to Kerry. Great podcast, always makes me laugh. This is Cliff Mace now, has to be the highlight of the weekend for me. Sunday afternoon, I live in Kiev. I go for my weekly shop at the local supermarket. Listening to this podcast in a foreign country will ensure that local people will look at you as you burst out laughing, having to put down bags of fruit as you start rhetorically asking questions such as, why don't you just stop now? Or calling out random words and phrases like darker than a goth's wardrobe.
Yes.
Anyway, so thank you very much, Steve, for getting in touch, and thank you for reviewing us on iTunes and iTunes
yes,
and everywhere
please.
and anywhere else. Okay, back to the confessions. Here's Dave's misdemeanour, which we've titled Daddy Fool. Dear Father Simon and the Holy Collective, my sin begins many, many years ago, though it wasn't actually exposed until very recently. Before I tell my tale, let me say this in my defence. I am a dad. I have a dad's sense of humour, and you may only get my gags if you're another dad. If you're anything other than a dad, you'll most likely tut at my random and frequent outbursts. It's not a promising start, Dave, is it, really? Now, the tale begins when my 2 daughters were younger, and we would watch family movies together. Sometimes in those films, a boy would sneak into a girl's bedroom for a secret kiss or to do homework.
Yeah.
I can't remember many where
No.
there's homework. Although War Games is quite good, there is a moment where the girl there goes up to his room and they try and do some board games and computer games.
Yes.
And listen to music.
Anyway, however, these were more innocent times and were not the kind of movies that some of your imaginative congregation may be thinking of. Is that right? Anyway, whenever this took place in a film, I would warn my girls that if I ever caught a boy in their room, I would be out with a shotgun and ensure that he never, ever would have an appetite to climb through another window or sneak up a staircase after dark. I'd show him. Now, Father Simon, I must at this point say I do not own a gun, never have owned a gun, never likely to own a gun, just in case the authorities are listening in, just to be clear, it was just a gag. Now, the girls would laugh when I did my boy bedroom gun routine during the films, and for many years before entering their room, I would stand outside the door and pretend to be talking to someone along the lines of, "I'm sure I heard him. No, I'm getting my gun. I'll show him," sneaking around my house. Then I would barge into the room and be faced with a giggling daughter who found this all hysterically funny. However, as my daughters got older, it became less funny to me. As indeed do all dad jokes, really, eventually. Until the point where it finally became an annoyance.
Dad!
Who could possibly have imagined? However, I continued to do it as the reaction from my daughters was now funnier than the original bit of fun had ever been.
Right.
And this was classic dad humour in my eyes. Now, cut to the present day, and one Monday morning, Pamela called me at work to say that the shower... I'm married to Pamela. Say that the shower in our daughter Angela's ensuite was dripping. I said I would fix it when I got home and would stop off for a washer on the way, as this was most likely the problem. Arriving home via the DIY store later that day, I was just in time to pass my wife on the doorstep. Apparently she'd forgotten it was her turn to open the church hall for the local women's guild, and as she whizzed past without stopping, she shouted, "You'll need to get your own tea," over her shoulder. With the realisation she was out of the house for the night, a plan was forming in my head. Washer fixed, get a beer out the fridge, take away, just in time for the football coming on. Result, all the stereotypes coming
Check.
true.
Check.
I got my box of tools out from under the stairs and headed up to Angela's room. Having seen her car in the drive, I knew she was home. So I did, so she's adult now.
Yes.
So I did my usual routine, knowing that it would infuriate her. "Right," I said. "That's it. I've had it. Another one sneaking into her room. I'm getting my gun. I am. I won't stop. It's loaded. I've had it." I paused and then shouted, "I'm coming in. You better pray for mercy." And I threw open the door. Now, as you enter the room, my daughter's bed is in between the door and the ensuite. From the side of the bed, all I could see was a pair of men's boots.
Oh.
I stepped quickly into the room to find a man lying at the side of the bed, face down with his hands over his head for protection. "Who the heck are you?" I demanded. The man didn't turn his head to face me, so he wasn't to know that all I was armed with was a toolbox and some washers. Still face down to the carpet, he whimpered, I've not done anything. I'm just here to fix the shower. My gear's in the bathroom. Your wife called me." Put down the tools, I tried to explain the long-running joke to the poor plumber, but unfortunately he didn't see the funny side, and as he got up, he told me, in between some rather choice language. I almost gave him a heart attack. He then gathered up his tools and stormed out, leaving the shower unfixed. And me awaiting an absolute roasting from my wife. My daughter, on the other hand, found it hilarious and told me it served me right. She'd actually been studying in our room, but having heard me start my rant, chose not to stop me. So, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness not from my wife, who couldn't even wait a couple of hours for me to fix the shower, or from my daughter, who knew he was there and didn't tell me, but from the plumber, who has most likely been left with a nervous tick. At the very least, I would have thought. Well, you can see how it might have happened. Everyone was trying to do the right thing, and you do feel sorry for the shower man. You can understand Dave's point of view. It's just a harmless family joke, so we thought Sister Bobby's going to sit on this one.
Well, the thing is, it's difficult because I can understand the plumber might have been traumatised and really upset, but I'm actually confused why he got in such a huff. Surely, when you explained the situation, you'd have gone, "Oh, right, okay, do you know what? You really scared me. Let me go and finish the shower." So, because I wouldn't have forgiven. I'd have said you shouldn't have done that to the plumber. I mean, I know you didn't know, but really, he was upset. But actually, because I'm so annoyed with the plumber for walking off and not fixing your shower, I think on that, guys, I'm going to forgive you this time. I love the story about you and your daughters. I think it's a great story, great family.
The plumber obviously thought the end was nigh.
Yes.
And so throws himself onto the floor.
Just a quick question.
Oh, yeah.
Was the boots by the side of the bed because he didn't want to take his dirty boots?
I think
Yes.
the boot.
That'll be because he didn't want to get in the shower with his dirty boots.
So he was a thoughtful.
What time had his wife left? Was she...
Just there, just as he
Yeah.
arrived. So
Oh, okay, that's all right.
anyway, any
Just
other
checking.
questions?
Well, no, I was just checking there wasn't something else that we'd missed beforehand.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
No. There wasn't,
Oh.
because otherwise, obviously...
Had his wife been helping? You know, you need to hold the shower thing up and
Yeah.
things like that, you know.
Had his wife been helping the plumber?
Just
Yeah.
checking.
That's a whole new
Because he had his
story.
boots off. That's my only concern.
True.
It's
Brother?
perfectly innocent with the boots, I'm going to say. Also, I'm going to say, the reason why dad humour, why we all find it hilarious, is because everyone else finds it mind-numbingly embarrassing. And the more embarrassing you find it, the more we're going to do it, because the funnier it is. We love it when you are cringing. The other point I would make here is, why is the wife calling for the plumber when he's already said, I'm getting the washer on the way home? Why do you need to...
Well, she didn't think he was going to do it.
Perhaps tell me that you've
In a
called
couple
the
of
plumber.
weeks, in a couple of weeks, he probably get around to it. you know?
Perhaps could have let me know about the plumber. So I am going to say forgiven, because obviously the blame lies, as we've already found, with his wife.
This is the place where penitents seek our pardon for their sins. Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Dear Simon and the Collective, I feel it's time to get this terrible deed off my shoulders and confess to yourselves about a matter which occurred in the early 80s in Aberdeen. I worked at one of the local veterinary practices as a nurse, and one day old Mrs. Reed, one of our regular clients, came in with her ginger cat, Felix. Needless to say, he was not the nicest cat, and poor Mrs. Reed regularly came in with her arms, legs, and sometimes even her face scratched after Felix had decided to attack her for no apparent reason. After a lot of persuasion from ourselves, she finally agreed it was time to relieve Felix of some of his equipment to see if that would help his temperament.
All right, we're all there. Everyone's caught up now.
Yes.
Got it, yeah.
Because that might have helped.
Might help. We don't know.
Who knows? Once Mrs. Reed said his goodbyes to Felix, and Felix was about to say goodbye his equipment, we took him downstairs and gave him the anaesthetic, which was in itself not the easiest task, given his aforementioned temperament. Eventually we got him to sleep, and the vet quickly performed the operation before Felix was returned to his cage to recover. Now, it needs to be mentioned at this junction, it's common practice for us to leave the cage door ajar after an operation, the reason being it enabled us to intervene swiftly if the cat choked as they came round from the anaesthetic, which sometimes happened. However, Felix decided to come round a little bit quicker than most cats after his op, and was up and out of his cage before we knew what was happening. Double bad luck for us was the fact that the safety door at the top of the stairs was wedged ajar, on account of it being a sunny day, and before we knew what was happening, Felix had managed to get himself past the first safety door and up the stairs. The last we saw of that darn cat, he was waddling along the back lane of the practice, and despite a number of us spending at least an hour hunting, Felix had disappeared and was nowhere to be found. It was at this point that panic started to set in, because despite his awful nature, we knew that Mrs. Reed loved Felix and would be lost without him. So what could we do?
I think we all know what's coming.
As we were trying to work out what to do next, one of the partners of the vet practice piped up that there were a couple of ginger cats at the local dog and cat home that he was involved with, and that he'd go and fetch them up for us. What a stroke of luck this was. After a short time, the partner returned, and amazingly, one of the cats had an incredible resemblance to Felix. You'd almost swear it was the same cat if it wasn't for the fact that this cat was unbelievably affectionate and intact. Yes, Father Simon, Felix Mark II had clearly never had the snip, which now posed us a moral dilemma for all of 5 seconds. The vet swiftly did the deed, and our new Felix was now lighter of his equipment, even though he didn't need to have it.
No.
This time we watched like hawks as he recovered, and once we were happy with him, we summoned Mrs. Reed to collect her cat, in inverted commas. She arrived about 30 minutes later, and as she took the new Felix out of his cage, I could feel the sweat gathering on my brow and my upper lip as we anxiously watched to see the reaction. Well, unbelievably, Felix the fraud was soon purring. He couldn't believe his luck. I'm in here, and affectionately cuddled Mrs. Reed as if they'd known each other their whole lives. What a fraudster. And we could see our plan had actually unbelievably worked. Mrs. Reed was over the moon and thanked us profusely. I can't believe a simple operation could have had that effect so quickly, she said. And as she toddled out of the practice and into the awaiting taxi, she had a huge smile on her face. few weeks later, Mrs. Reed actually phoned us to thank us for persuading her to go ahead with the operation and that she couldn't be happier with her Felix. She actually said the words, and I quote, "He's just a totally different cat."
Yes, he is.
To which we wanted to say, "You've got that right, Mrs. Reed." So although we actually did Mrs. Reed a huge favour, I still feel bad about losing the original Felix and then castrating another cat just to cover up our crime. Therefore, I fall at your mercy to speak on behalf of the nation. Okay, so that's Therese and her confession from early 1980s Aberdeen veterinary practices. And I can see, because I suppose there's unethical behaviour in there, Bobby Pryor.
Yeah, and I just cannot see on what grounds I can forgive. Because the other thing that really confuses me is, your animals. These things that you have, these family members, even if they're in a bad mood and they're suddenly in a good mood, I think she would know. I mean, I think it's the fact that she would want to believe. So she has some kind of, there's that kind of trick that you could go, well, this happened. So she has something to kind of qualify her doubt. She has something else that's happened to him, so he is a different cat. But it is a different cat. Also, you
Everyone's
run the
happy,
risk.
though.
Well, no, because Felix has gone missing and he's just had an operation.
Yeah, Felix
and
is horrible.
Well, no, he wasn't horrible. It's just, his
He
different personality.
He scratched Mrs. Reed.
Well, maybe Mrs. Reed didn't hold him right. But the other thing is...
So it was her fault.
No, but what
This
if the
kind of thing
point
Matt
is,
would
but
say.
here's the risk. The risk to raise is, of course, if Felix actually made it home, and then she'd have had two cats. I mean, maybe Felix found another place. I hope nothing happened to Felix, but I think actually I can't forgive you because I don't think this would happen. Different times, eh, Matt?
Well, yes. I think everyone's a winner here. I mean, false Felix gets a nice house. He's very happy. Mrs. Reed, she's over the moon. Can't believe her luck that one simple operation and you've turned a cat that was obviously not really suited to her into this fabulous cat. And we would surmise that probably Felix wandered out into the world and
probably quite happy with his
very
his
happy
lot,
with life. He
strutting
decided,
around.
do you know what? Why am I so angry at the world all the time? Maybe I need to change my perspective. And
I think he got the stray cat strut.
And thankfully, I now have because of this incident involving the vet. So I am going to forgive because it all brought us all together and lessons for us all.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast.
And that was Therese's confession, Fear of the Cat, which concludes this week's batch of confessions. Let me know if you have one, a little secret of your own, because I suspect you probably have quite a few. Bobby always hints at the ones that she has. Maybe she'll write in, confessions@bbc.co.uk. Before we leave, you've got time for the latest Confessions from the Crypt, which is actually a favourite of Dr. Mosh. So here's our podcast classic, as requested by Ben Keating on Twitter. Could you please include the lawnmower death confession in a future podcast? It's the first confession I ever heard on Drive Time. Ben, your wish is our command. We called it A Face in the Crowd. Dear Simon and the All-Forgiving Collective, especially Matt, this comes from Dan, by the way. Thank you, Dan. After 20 years, it seems right to let go the burden of my guilt and throw myself at the mercy of your judgment. It was a recent confession I heard on your show, something to do with a music publication which triggered my memory and brought back an overwhelming sensation of guilt and dishonesty. Now, as a fully grown adult and responsible parent, trying my hardest to instill good morals and virtues in my children, I need to clear my own slate in order that I, too, might be a good role model. My story dates back to late 1995 or possibly early 1996. I am 18. I am a first-year student at the University of Loughborough and a bit of a rocker. My days generally consisted of getting up for breakfast at lunchtime, not doing enough study, too much watching of Beavis and Butthead, and then thrashing out with some loud metal on my hi-fi. That's what I was doing all day. That's what we did in Loughborough. My room in Halls, however, was incredible. A mixture of scantily clad pictures of Pamela Anderson and Joe Guest and torn-out posters from Metal Hammer and Kerrang magazines. Now, I'm familiar with Kerrang. Do you subscribe to Metal Hammer?
Metal Hammer, yes, absolutely.
What kind of thing?
Those are two very good publications.
High-quality publications, very good. I guess, looking back, I was a good balance, says Dan, of popular and unpopular, and it was Kerrang magazine which was at the centre of my deception. At this time, they ran a regular competition called Face in the Crowd, where they would show a picture of some sweaty headbangers at a recent gig with a circle around someone's face. And that was obviously the face in the crowd. Then if that person happened to be a reader, all they had to do was to send a photograph of themselves to win by post. Email was in its infancy back then, and digital photographs were the stuff of tomorrow's world. Yes.
That's a really good feature.
Well, absolutely. One particular issue of Kerrang, the face in the crowd individual, looked rather familiar. It was me. The only thing was, this picture was taken at a lawnmower death concert.
What a name!
What?
Oh, yes!
And how do you think you spell death, by the way? Go on then.
Well, not D-E-A-S?
No.
A-F?
AF? No, it's obviously lawnmower death is spelled D-E-T-H. There's no A.
There's
Is
no
there
A.
an umlaut?
There's no umlauts anywhere.
Definitely
but what
not
a band.
misspelt. No.
Anyway, it's Lawnmower Death, who I think come from the Nottinghamshire area. I don't know where it was. I wasn't there, to be honest, says Dan. Lawnmower Death was a bit beyond my taste. My taste was predominantly the big four, and that shouldn't need explaining, but Matt will explain anyway.
Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax, and Megadeth.
But it looked as though I was at a Lawnmower Death concert. By the way, in case you're interested, have we found them? Yes, we have. Here we go with some Lawnmower Death.
Hang on, that's a cover.
They're doing Kids in America.
Yeah. Hey!
For the first time on Radio
I think
2.
they're doing the backing vocals as well.
Anyway, so it's the mid-90s, and that was the face in the crowd at the Lawnmower Death concert, and it was clearly Dan, except that he wasn't actually there. That was not his kind of thing at all. I definitely wasn't there, says Dan. Well, I thought, if I think this guy could be me, then surely those at Kerrang will be convinced as well. So I scrounged around for a stamp, and I duly sent them a photograph of myself to Kerrang HQ. Some time passed, perhaps a few weeks, enough time for life to move on, and I forgot all about the competition. Then one day, a fellow student said there was a package that had arrived for me at the Students' Union. It was a massive cardboard box, the sort of thing you might use to move house, and it was absolutely stuffed full of goodies. It was a rock hamper.
Wow.
Now that is that's a good marketing. I've just had an idea.
Yeah.
Rock hampers.
Yes.
Do you think? And you could just fill it full of rock. Pass that on to Dr. Marsh.
What, for a hod carrier?
Yeah, very good. I'm not quite sure what the success rate of this competition was in terms of actually finding the face in the crowd. I'm guessing it was not that great because I had everything in this box. It was crammed full. I had 10 T-shirts, a dozen or so CDs, and a range of General Tap posters and merchandise, a lot of it with Lawnmower Death on. What a complete result. So 20 years have now passed and the T-shirts don't fit anymore, and it's becoming even harder to find something on which to play the CDs. So it's time to come clean. I don't feel the need to ask forgiveness from Kerrang. I followed their rules, and it was they who agreed that I looked most like the guy in the photograph. But to this day I have wondered if that Lawnmower Death fan had also entered the competition and that I was unjustly judged to be more of a likeness than he was to himself. So it's on his behalf that I ask you to grant me some forgiveness. Well, very good. Okay, I don't think there are phone calls being made even now to the assorted members of Lawnmower Death. I think we were just on radio. Get away! We're not going to be on Radio 2.
Radio 2.
They have moved on. Anyway, so Sister Rebecca, what do you make of Dan's confession?
Well, the thing is, if he thought it was him, then he's right in guessing that the people at Kerrang would never have known that it wasn't him. But I guess the whole point is, as he said, that there may have been a genuine person who lost out as a result. But, you know, I doubt it very much, somehow. So I think... I don't think anyone else missed out. I do think he has already suffered because, as he said, he didn't even like Lawnmower Death and he got the T-shirt. So what was the point of that? So I'm going to forgive because it's funny.
Bobby will find a moral position to take.
Well, no, I think that Kerrang are the forerunners of upcycling. What they did is they were cleaning out the cupboard and they went, how can we get rid of this but not throw it in to a dump or put it into landfill? So what we need to do is no one is really going to claim to be in the crowd of this crowd and this band. But let's just put it out there for a joke. And it's like a rock find Wally, of course. And there was probably one person, just Dan, that sent his picture in and just went, yeah, that's me. And they went, that's fine, let's send him the stuff. He's the guy that claimed it. It's absolutely fine. And you're forgiven. You are forgiven.
By the way, Lawnmower Death are on at Rock City, which is in, I imagine this is in Nottingham, on the 19th of December.
Still going.
Yeah, they're still going. And, says Neil in St Helens, if I recall, their lead singer is called Qualcast Rotivator. They really are hot on the lawnmower thing.
Wow.
Okay, thank you, Neil. So, Brother Matt, what do you make of that?
I mean, obviously we should, first of all, stand and applaud the choice of title of band, Lawnmower Death. Who doesn't want to spend an evening with Lawnmower Death? No one. And but also, Bobby's quite right. Basically, all of this stuff was coming from the pluggers for Lawnmower Death, who had been flooding Kerrang offices with their T-shirts and posters and CDs, and so they were very happy to get it off their hands. So, frankly, Dan, well done, because the pluggers for Lawnmower Death couldn't really get rid of that stuff quick enough. And what great news to hear that the band are back together and now touring the country.
The Confessions Podcast.
And that was our classic confession. Thank you, Pete from Lawnmower Death.
Do you know what's interesting is they played that confession, the entire confession, before their next gig. So they'd obviously taped it off the radio and then played it before the next gig.
We should play their jingle, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Really? So these are Lawnmower Death.
Dr. Mosh! Dr. Mosh! Dr. Mosh! Bring the rock, it's time for Dr. Mosh!
Now, Sister Bobby, you forgave 1.5 people this week, which takes your tally to 65.5 forgives and 67.5 not forgives.
Oh, okay. So I basically got to get a step back on it because I was being too lenient, I think.
Yeah, I reckon you're being
Over
all
the summer.
soft and cuddly.
Yeah.
Matt, you forgave 2 people this week.
Yes.
88 forgives and 46 not.
Well, I like to stay ahead of the curve, which is where I am.
All right. So if you made it to the... is that where you are?
Yes.
If you made it to the end of the last podcast, I asked you to tweet, broad beans is a main. That was another one from
absolutely
Nige,
isn't.
wasn't it? So we had figs as a main this week.
Oh, goodness me.
Which were very good.
They were
Very
great.
good.
Lovely they were.
Can't wait for the chili.
This week's code phrase is, would you buy a car and throw the carburettor away? With an exclamation mark. Don't forget you can hear our whole radio show, because it is part of a whole show, every weekday from 5 on BBC Radio 2. Thank you for listening. Matt says goodbye.
Hello, bye.
Bobby says hello.
Hello, goodbye.
Thanks very much for listening. And now a strange woman says...
The Confessions Podcast. Go in peace.